The twin suns of the desert world stretched across the sky like molten gold, painting the sand dunes with sharp shadows. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground beneath the boots of Captain Lyra Vance seemed to hum with the strange energy of the planet. Lyra had traveled across countless star systems in her life, but this world, dry and silent except for the occasional whisper of wind, had a quiet kind of mystery that she could not ignore. She had landed here to survey the surface for scientific purposes, but as she trudged along the dunes, a faint, high-pitched sound reached her ears. It was soft, almost musical, but it carried a note of distress that made her stop in her tracks. She tilted her head, listening carefully. The sound came again, fragile and repeating, as if someone or something were calling for help. It was unusual, unlike any wildlife she had encountered before. Lyra's heart quickened. She was trained to approach unknown signals with caution, but something about the tone, delicate and urgent, tugged at her instinct to help. Slowly, she adjusted her visor and scanned the sand around her with her portable sensors. Her instruments detected a faint movement beneath the sand, a shallow vibration that matched the timing of the sound. Lyra's curiosity grew, and she approached the spot carefully, letting her hand brush the surface without disturbing it too much. There, half buried in a shimmering sand pod, she found the source of the cry. A small alien child, with large eyes that reflected the twin suns like pools of liquid silver. The child's skin shimmered faintly in soft colors that shifted like a slow rainbow, and her delicate hands pressed against the transparent surface of the pod as she tried to push herself free. Lyra's pulse quickened. She knelt beside the pod and activated the external controls. The device was clearly old, worn by the desert winds, but it was still functional. Her fingers danced across the touch panels, trying to release the mechanism, but the pod seemed unresponsive. The child's cries became a little louder, sharper now with rising frustration, and Lyra realized that she needed to act quickly. "Don't worry," Lyra said gently, speaking slowly, though she had no idea if the child could understand her. "I'm going to help you." Lyra frowned and tried another approach. She gestured with her hands, pointing at herself, then at the child, then motioning toward the pod's release panel. The child tilted her head, studying the human with careful attention. Then, with a small but deliberate motion, she reached toward the controls herself, mimicking Lyra's gestures. Encouraged, Lyra smiled and guided the child's hands with her own. Slowly, the pod's locking mechanism clicked, and the cover slid open. A cloud of fine, glowing sand spilled over the edge, sparkling like tiny stars. The child stepped out cautiously, blinking at the sunlight that had been denied to her for so long. Her small frame was slight, almost fragile-looking, but there was a strength in her posture that spoke of resilience. Lyra extended her hand. "Come on," she said. "You're safe now." Together, they walked a few steps away from the pod, giving space as the child adjusted to the open desert. "What's your name?" Lyra asked, though she did not expect an answer. The child opened her mouth and let out a series of melodic sounds, rising and falling in pitch like a song. Lyra frowned, listening carefully, trying to make sense of the pattern. "I think that's your name, maybe," Lyra said with a gentle laugh. "I'll call you Nira until I know more." They moved slowly across the dunes, the wind carrying the soft song of Nira's voice. Lyra kept her sensors active, scanning the surroundings for any threats or useful resources. She noticed faint structures in the distance, partially buried in sand. They looked old, abandoned, but still intact. Lyra's curiosity piqued. Perhaps these ruins held answers to Nira's presence on the planet. As they approached the structures, Nira began pointing toward one of the buildings, her fingers trembling slightly. Lyra followed her gesture and realized that the pod must have originated from here. The facility was partially buried, its walls coated with dust and sand, but the design was unmistakably artificial. Smooth lines, geometric shapes, and faint glowing panels suggested advanced technology. Inside, the air was cooler, and the glow of dormant panels illuminated the hallway with a soft blue light. Nira ran ahead cautiously, her steps light but deliberate. She paused near a wall and touched a series of panels with her small fingers. Lights flickered to life, responding to her touch. Lyra stepped closer, fascinated. The child seemed to know the mechanisms instinctively, as if she had been trained or familiar with them before. "This place, you know it?" Lyra asked. Nira turned toward her, tilting her head, then made the soft singing sounds again. Lyra shook her head and smiled. She might not understand the words, but the tone suggested comfort, relief. The girl felt at home here, and Lyra realized she was witnessing the deep intelligence and adaptability of this alien species. They explored further, the facility slowly revealing its secrets. Dormant robots and devices blinked to life as Nira approached, responding to her presence. She moved with careful precision, guiding Lyra through corridors that seemed to anticipate their arrival. Every so often, Nira paused and looked back at the human, as if inviting her to follow along with trust. Lyra felt a deep admiration for the child's courage and intelligence. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Lyra realized that she had not eaten or rested, so captivated was she by Nira's abilities and the strange, beautiful world around her. The desert outside began to glow in the light of the setting suns, painting the sand with shades of red and purple. Lyra suggested they rest in one of the chambers. Nira seemed to agree, curling up in a corner that was soft and warm, her skin reflecting the ambient light in gentle waves. Lyra watched her, a profound sense of purpose settling in her chest. Here was a life unlike any she had encountered, small and fragile, yet filled with intelligence and a remarkable connection to her environment. Humanity had often prided itself on its curiosity and compassion, but seeing these qualities mirrored in Nira's trust and ability reminded her why explorers like herself ventured into the unknown. Night fell on the desert planet and the twin moons rose, casting pale silver light through the facility's transparent roof. Lyra sat beside Nira, speaking softly as the girl hummed her melodic tones. Though no words were exchanged, a connection was established, one that transcended species. Lyra realized that the galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but it was moments like these, moments of understanding and empathy, that truly defined what it meant to be human. And as the night deepened, Lyra promised herself that she would protect this child, learn from her, and perhaps, together, uncover the secrets of this strange and beautiful world. Nira's small hand rested against her own, and for the first time in a long while, Lyra felt the warmth of purpose and the thrill of discovery intertwining. Humanity, she thought, was not just defined by its strength or technology. It was defined by its heart, and in this silent desert under alien moons, that heart had found its echo. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, spilling gold across the sand dunes and casting long shadows over the strange alien facility. Lyra woke first, stretching her tired limbs as she watched Nira sleep quietly in the corner. The child's soft skin shimmered in the gentle light, colors shifting like liquid, and Lyra felt a warm sense of awe. Even in sleep, Nira seemed connected to the world around her, as if she could feel the pulse of the planet itself. Lyra rose quietly, careful not to disturb her new companion. She walked to the nearest panel and activated it. The lights flickered briefly, then stabilized, casting a steady blue glow across the room. The walls hummed faintly with power, and Lyra realized that the facility was not entirely abandoned. Some systems still functioned, waiting for someone who knew how to activate them. She studied the panels, scanning for signs of data or information that might explain the purpose of the facility and the reason Nira was here. Nira stirred and blinked her large eyes. When she saw Lyra, she smiled and stretched, making soft, musical sounds that seemed almost like laughter. Lyra smiled back. "Good morning, Nira," she said. "I think we should try to understand this place. Maybe it will help us know why you were in that pod." She placed her small hands on the glowing surface, and the panel responded, lights flowing along its edges. Lyra watched in fascination. Nira's gestures seemed natural, confident, as if she had done this many times before. The way she interacted with the technology showed an intelligence that was quick, curious, and fearless. Together, they moved through the facility, the floors smooth beneath their feet. Nira led Lyra through corridors that twisted and turned, some partially buried in sand that had blown in through broken sections of wall. Along the way, Lyra noticed signs that the facility had been used for research. There were containers of strange, bioluminescent plants and devices that seemed designed to monitor environmental conditions. Lyra's curiosity grew. She realized that this world might have once been a center of advanced study, though long forgotten by anyone else. Nira paused at a chamber with a large viewing window. Beyond it, Lyra could see the desert stretching for miles, its dunes rippling like waves frozen in time. But what caught her attention was the strange, almost crystalline structures scattered across the sand. They glowed faintly in the sunlight, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns in brilliant colors. Lyra had never seen anything like them. "These look like some kind of energy formations," she said aloud, though Nira did not seem to understand the words. The child pressed her small hands against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. She made a series of melodic sounds, rising and falling, and Lyra could only guess that she was expressing excitement. Deciding to explore further, Lyra found a map display on one of the walls. It showed the facility and the surrounding terrain. One area was marked with a series of small, interconnected structures, all partially buried under sand. Lyra traced a finger along the path that led to them. "This might be where you came from, Nira," she said. The child's eyes lit up, and she took Lyra's hand, guiding her along the hallway toward the exit. Outside, the sun had climbed higher and the heat pressed against Lyra's skin. She shaded her eyes and followed Nira across the dunes. Every step was careful. The sand shifted beneath their feet, and the wind carried tiny grains into the air, sparkling in the sunlight. The crystalline structures they had seen from the viewing window grew closer, and Lyra could feel a faint hum in the air as she approached. The energy they emitted was subtle but unmistakable, a resonance that seemed almost alive. Nira paused before one of the larger formations, placing both hands against its surface. Lyra approached slowly, sensing the energy as well. The structure responded to Nira's touch, glowing brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her own movements. Lyra marveled at the connection. It was as if the child and the planet itself communicated in a language beyond words. She knelt beside Nira and placed her own hand near the edge of the crystal. It responded slightly, glowing faintly, though not as strongly as with Nira. "You have a connection to this place," Lyra said softly, more to herself than to Nira. "I wonder what it means." Nira hummed and turned toward Lyra, her expression curious. The child reached out again, pressing her hand firmly against the crystal. This time the structure pulsed more strongly, sending waves of light that danced across the sand. Lyra felt a thrill of excitement. She realized that the crystals were more than decorations. They were part of a system, a network that responded to thought or presence. Hours passed as Lyra observed Nira interacting with the crystals. The child's movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, and Lyra began to understand patterns. Some crystals responded only when touched in a specific order, while others pulsed when Nira stood nearby without touching them. It was clear that Nira had an innate understanding of the system. Lyra could only watch in awe, amazed at the combination of intelligence, intuition, and harmony with the environment. When the twin suns began to dip toward the horizon, Lyra suggested that they return to the facility. Nira made a soft, melodic sound that Lyra took as agreement, and they began the trek back. The desert glowed in warm shades of orange and red, the sand catching the light in ways that made it sparkle as if filled with tiny stars. Lyra felt a deep sense of calm, knowing that for now, Nira was safe, and that she had found a companion unlike any she had known before. Back in the facility, Lyra decided to examine the crystals network more closely. She accessed a console and began to interface with the system, using her own knowledge of energy patterns and planetary resonance. Though she could not replicate Nira's touch, she could analyze the connections and gather data that might explain how the system worked. Nira watched her closely, her large eyes reflecting the glow of the panels, humming softly as she observed. Lyra realized that the crystals were likely part of a planetary network designed to sustain life in some form. The energy they emitted seemed to stabilize the environment, possibly regulating temperature, moisture, or other elements. Nira's interaction with them suggested that her species had once been caretakers or researchers here, maintaining balance with the planet's energy. Lyra felt a surge of respect for the child. Even at her small size, she carried knowledge and connection that surpassed anything humans had experienced in their brief history in space. That night, Lyra set up a small area for rest near one of the interior chambers, while Nira curled up nearby, humming a soft, comforting tune. Lyra stared at the ceiling, watching the faint glow from the panels above. She thought about the vastness of the universe, the countless worlds waiting to be discovered, and the unique place humanity could have in them. It was not strength or technology alone that mattered, she realized. It was curiosity, empathy, and the willingness to reach out across differences. In the quiet moments before sleep, Lyra reflected on Nira's presence. She had been drawn here by a cry, a sound that spoke of distress and hope all at once. And in answering that call, Lyra had found a connection that transcended species. She knew that there were challenges ahead, many mysteries still awaited, and the desert planet held secrets that would not reveal themselves easily. But she also knew that with patience, understanding, and respect, she could help Nira and learn from her in ways that might change both their lives. The next morning, Lyra woke to find Nira already awake, standing near the exit to the facility. She made a series of melodic sounds and pointed toward the dunes beyond. Lyra understood immediately. Nira wanted to explore. She smiled and nodded. Today, they would venture further, uncovering more of the planet's secrets and learning together. As they stepped outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of minerals and the sharp, dry fragrance of the desert. The crystals glimmered in the morning light, and Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. Each step they took was a discovery, a small adventure that revealed the harmony and intelligence of a world that humans had never touched. She looked at Nira, her small hand clasped in her own, and realized that the bond they shared was rare and precious. Through the day, they moved across the dunes, finding more crystal formations, each responding differently to Nira's touch. Lyra took careful notes, recording patterns and energy readings. She marveled at the child's skill and the way she seemed to communicate silently with the planet. The experience was humbling. Humanity often thought of itself as powerful, capable of conquering worlds. But here, on this quiet desert planet, Lyra understood that true strength came from connection, understanding, and respect for life in all its forms. As the twin suns set again, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold, Lyra and Nira returned to the facility. The child hummed a soft song, and Lyra responded with her own gentle words, sharing a language of care and presence that needed no translation. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries, and perhaps new allies. But for now, there was peace, wonder, and the quiet thrill of discovery. Lyra watched Nira fall asleep, her glowing skin reflecting the fading light, and felt a deep sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns and possibilities, but in moments like this, she knew why she had chosen to explore. Humanity's heart, its empathy, creativity, and courage, was not measured in power or conquest. It was measured in the willingness to answer a call, to reach across difference, and to protect life wherever it was found. And in Nira's trust, she saw that heart mirrored back at her. Outside, the desert whispered under the night sky, the crystals casting faint pulses of light that danced across the sand. The facility stood silent but alive, a place of memory, intelligence, and potential. And within it, two beings, human and alien, shared the quiet wonder of a new friendship, one that might shape the future of both their worlds. The morning light crept slowly into the desert facility, casting long shadows across the smooth floors. Lyra rose early, as usual, careful not to wake Nira, who was still curled up near the softly glowing panels. The child stirred briefly, her silver eyes fluttering open, and then smiled when she saw Lyra standing nearby. Nira hummed a delicate, rising melody that seemed to brighten the room more than any panel ever could. Lyra smiled and extended her hand, which the child grasped lightly, her touch warm and curious. Today, Lyra thought, they would explore deeper into the facility. The previous day had revealed the crystals and their strange energy, but much of the structure remained a mystery. She had studied the map again and noted a series of rooms marked with symbols she did not recognize. Some of them appeared to be laboratories or storage areas, though their function was unclear. Lyra adjusted her backpack and prepared to venture farther, while Nira moved ahead, humming softly, her small body confident and steady. The corridors grew narrower as they moved deeper into the heart of the facility. Lyra could feel the energy of the crystals from outside, a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. The further they went, the stronger the sensation became, almost as if the planet itself was aware of their presence. Nira paused at a junction, placing her hands against the smooth wall. A panel lit up, displaying a network of glowing lines that ran through the facility. Nira touched a specific point, and a soft wave of energy pulsed along the lines, illuminating the path ahead. Lyra watched in awe. The child's instinctive understanding of the technology was extraordinary. As they continued, Lyra noticed small devices scattered along the walls. They resembled drones, spherical with tiny lights flickering on their surfaces. At first, they appeared inactive, but as Nira approached, they responded. They floated upward gently, following her movements with silent grace. Lyra realized these were part of the facility's maintenance system, automated caretakers designed to respond to the presence of its inhabitants. Nira interacted with them naturally, touching one and causing it to emit a soft, harmonic sound. Lyra smiled, feeling a connection between the child and the technology around them. Eventually, they reached a large chamber that seemed different from the others. The walls were curved, smooth, and covered in panels that shimmered like liquid glass. In the center of the room was a circular platform, slightly raised, with a series of small crystals embedded around its edge. Nira approached it immediately, her fingers brushing lightly over the crystals. The platform responded, glowing faintly at first, then brighter as Nira's touch continued. Lyra stepped closer, fascinated. "What do you think it does?" she asked. Nira turned to her and hummed, tilting her head in a way that suggested she did not have words for it, or perhaps words were unnecessary. Lyra studied the platform, noting patterns in its glow. Each crystal lit in sequence, forming shapes and lines that seemed almost like a map or code. She realized that the platform was not just a display. It was a system that recorded information, perhaps even memories or history. Encouraged by curiosity, Lyra placed her hand near one of the crystals. It pulsed faintly but did not respond as strongly as with Nira. She adjusted her touch, trying different angles and rhythms, but the glow remained subtle. Nira reached over and guided her hand, and together they discovered a pattern that activated the platform fully. The lights expanded, projecting holographic images into the air above them. Lyra gasped. The projections showed landscapes, cities, and structures that were unfamiliar yet clearly inhabited by Nira's species. She saw beings moving gracefully, interacting with energy similar to that of the crystals. Some images depicted studies and experiments, while others showed communal gatherings, teaching, and exploration. It was clear that this species had a deep connection to their world, maintaining balance and harmony through understanding the energy of their environment. Nira hummed softly, touching the images as they floated in the air. Each touch caused the projection to shift, zooming in on details of the people and their interactions. Lyra realized that Nira was not just observing. She was interacting with memories, perhaps even ancestral knowledge stored in the facility. The child species had preserved their history in a way humans rarely did, combining technology and intuition seamlessly. As they explored the projections, a soft vibration ran through the floor. Lyra looked down and saw faint lines of light moving beneath the platform, like veins of energy connecting the entire facility. She realized that the building itself was alive in a way, responding to Nira's presence and her interaction with the crystals. It was not just a place of research. It was a living archive, a repository of knowledge waiting to be unlocked. Suddenly, one of the projections shifted sharply, showing a distant chamber with walls cracking and energy flickering. Lyra frowned, sensing potential danger, though nothing in the facility had ever shown aggression. She glanced at Nira, who tilted her head, humming thoughtfully. The child moved toward the image, pressing her hands against the holographic projection. The flickering stabilized, and the chamber in the projection returned to normal. Lyra watched in amazement. Nira was able to interact with the system in ways that humans could not, stabilizing energy flows and repairing disruptions. She realized that the child's connection to the crystals was more than instinct. It was an intuitive understanding of energy, harmony, and balance. Lyra felt both awe and a sense of responsibility. Nira's abilities were extraordinary, but the child was still small, still human in her reliance on care and protection. They moved deeper into the facility, following the paths highlighted by Nira's interaction with the holographic map. Along the way, Lyra noted several chambers filled with devices that seemed designed for observation and study. Some contained plants and minerals, while others held equipment that monitored environmental conditions, energy levels, and the crystals themselves. The facility had been a hub of knowledge, a place where life and energy were studied and nurtured. Eventually, they reached a chamber that appeared to be the control hub. Panels covered the walls, each displaying complex patterns of light and energy. Lyra stepped carefully, feeling the hum of power in the air. Nira approached a central console, placing her hands on a series of crystals embedded in the surface. Lights danced across the room, responding to her touch. The child hummed a melody, and the system seemed to recognize her, activating fully. Lyra examined the panels, trying to understand the information displayed. The system's monitored energy flows across the facility, linking each crystal to others in a vast network. The data suggested that the crystals were not isolated. They were part of a planetary system, maintaining balance across wide areas. Nira's species had learned to interact with this network naturally, using intuition rather than complex computation. Lyra felt a deep admiration for their intelligence and connection to their environment. Suddenly, a series of lights flickered along one of the walls. Lyra turned to see a display showing an external section of the facility, buried beneath sand. Something had shifted in the structure, causing energy fluctuations. She frowned, concerned, but Nira remained calm, touching the panels lightly. The lights stabilized, and the display returned to normal. Lyra realized that the child's presence alone helped maintain harmony, her intuitive connection stabilizing the system. As they worked, Lyra began to understand the broader purpose of the facility. It was more than a research station. It was a living library, a place where knowledge, energy, and life were maintained in harmony. Nira was not just a visitor. She was a caretaker, capable of interacting with and preserving the facility's functions. Lyra felt honored to witness such a connection, and she understood that their partnership would be key to exploring the mysteries of this world. The day passed as they moved through the control hub, learning and observing. Nira's interactions grew more complex, guiding Lyra through patterns of energy and light, teaching her a form of communication without words. Lyra responded with gestures, mimicking melodies and touching crystals in rhythm with the child. Together, they created a dialogue that transcended language, a shared understanding built on trust, curiosity, and empathy. As the twin suns began to set, Lyra suggested a break. Nira hummed in agreement, and they settled on a platform overlooking one of the glowing crystal fields outside. The desert stretched endlessly, its dunes catching the warm light, while the crystals pulsed gently in response to the child's presence. Lyra felt a sense of peace and wonder, knowing that this world held secrets waiting to be discovered, and that she was not alone in unraveling them. Lyra reflected on the day's discoveries. The facility was alive, Nira's abilities were extraordinary, and the bond they shared was rare and profound. Humanity had always valued exploration and curiosity, but here, on a distant world, Lyra understood that true strength lay in empathy, understanding, and cooperation. Nira's trust and connection had opened a door to knowledge that humans might never have accessed alone. As night fell, the twin moons rose, casting pale light across the desert and illuminating the crystal's gentle glow. Lyra watched Nira as the child settled near the edge of the platform, humming softly. The melodies seemed to echo across the dunes, carrying energy and harmony through the night. Lyra felt a deep sense of purpose. She would protect Nira, learn from her, and help uncover the secrets of this remarkable world. In the quiet of the desert night, Lyra realized that the adventure had only just begun. The facility still held mysteries, and the planet's energy network was vast and intricate. Challenges awaited, discoveries to be made, and a connection between human and alien that could change their understanding of life and intelligence. But for now, there was wonder, trust, and the thrill of exploration. As she gazed at the glowing crystals, Lyra felt hope. Nira's trust, curiosity, and intelligence were a reminder that humanity's heart could reach across differences, creating bonds that transcended worlds. And in that realization, she understood that this journey was not just about discovery. It was about connection, empathy, and the courage to step into the unknown. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Perhaps the facility held puzzles that even Nira could not solve alone. Perhaps the desert would reveal obstacles they could not yet see. But Lyra felt ready. Together, they could face whatever mysteries awaited, guided by curiosity, intelligence, and the unspoken trust that had formed between them. And so, as the twin moons bathed the desert in silver light, Lyra and Nira rested, the hum of the crystals surrounding them like a lullaby. In the quiet of the night, humanity's heart shone brightly, not in power, but in understanding, empathy, and the courage to reach out and protect life wherever it was found. The morning wind carried a sharper chill than before, brushing across the desert sands as Lyra and Nira prepared to venture beyond the facility's safe walls. The twin suns had barely risen, and the dunes shimmered in gold and pink hues, the landscape stretching endlessly in every direction. Lyra adjusted her pack, checking her instruments. The energy readings from the crystals outside the facility had grown more complex overnight, and she sensed that the deeper desert held secrets they were only beginning to understand. Nira stood beside her, humming softly, her small hands brushing against the glowing panels embedded in the walls of the facility as if drawing strength from the energy. Lyra smiled. The child's confidence and intuition were remarkable. Even here, in a world so alien to humans, Nira moved with purpose and grace, connected not only to the facility but to the desert itself. They began their journey across the dunes, moving carefully but steadily. The sand shifted beneath their feet, and Lyra noticed subtle changes in the energy readings from the crystals in the distance. Some areas glowed brighter, while others flickered faintly. It was as if the desert itself were alive, reacting to their presence and the movement of energy through the ground. Nira paused occasionally, touching the sand lightly with her hands and humming a soft melody. Lyra watched her closely, learning from the child's intuitive gestures, realizing that these were subtle signals from the planet. As they climbed a large dune, Lyra spotted a series of jagged formations rising from the sand like teeth. Crystalline shards jutted from the ground, refracting the sunlight into rainbow streaks. But what caught her attention was a faint shimmer beneath the sand between the formations. Something had shifted in the terrain overnight, and it did not seem natural. "Stay close, Nira," Lyra said gently, crouching to examine the area. She brushed the sand aside with her hands, revealing a thin layer of crystal embedded in the dunes. It pulsed faintly in response to their presence. Nira stepped forward, placing her small hands near the crystal. Immediately, a soft hum resonated through the ground, and the faint shimmer beneath the sand strengthened into a clear path of light, guiding them forward. Lyra followed, fascinated. The child's connection to the crystals was more than instinct. It was an active interaction with the planet's energy network. The pulse beneath the sand seemed to recognize Nira's presence and respond to her actions. Lyra felt both excitement and a sense of reverence. Humanity often thought of itself as powerful, capable of understanding and controlling, but here in the desert, she realized that true intelligence was about harmony, patience, and respect. The light path led them toward a small canyon, its walls smooth and glinting with embedded crystal. The air inside was cooler, and Lyra could feel a subtle shift in energy as they stepped in. Nira paused, placing her hands against the walls and humming. The crystals responded, casting patterns of light across the canyon floor almost like a map. Lyra crouched, examining the patterns carefully. It appeared to indicate a safe passage through the canyon, avoiding unstable areas in the sand above. "This way," Nira seemed to say without words, and Lyra followed closely, letting the child guide her. The canyon twisted and turned, and at several points, small sections of crystal protruded from the walls. Nira touched them lightly, and beams of light connected from one point to another, illuminating hidden paths and signaling which areas were safe to cross. Lyra marveled at the child's ability to read the landscape through energy alone. As they reached the canyon's center, a low rumble echoed through the walls. Lyra looked around, unsure of the source. The sand above them shifted slightly, and she realized that a small section of the canyon wall was unstable. Before she could warn Nira, the child's hands pressed against a nearby crystal, and a soft pulse radiated through the canyon. The unstable wall held firm, stabilized by energy Lyra could not see but could sense resonating through the ground. "You're incredible," Lyra said softly, awe in her voice. Nira glanced at her with wide, silver eyes, humming a soft note that sounded almost like laughter. Lyra realized that the child not only interacted with the crystals, but could influence the energy of the desert itself. This was not magic, nor was it technology as humans understood it. It was a living harmony, a connection between mind, body, and planet. They continued through the canyon, the light pulses guiding them safely over hidden dips and across unstable sand patches. The journey was slow, deliberate, and filled with wonder. Lyra recorded the patterns, making careful notes and sketches. She could not replicate Nira's abilities, but she could learn from them, understanding how the child interpreted energy and responded to changes in the environment. It was a lesson in humility as well as discovery. Hours passed, and the twin suns climbed higher, making the canyon warm and the light from the crystals more dazzling. Lyra noticed subtle shapes moving across the sand outside the canyon, shadows that did not belong to dunes or rocks. At first, she thought they were mirages, a trick of the sunlight on crystal. But as they approached the canyon's exit, she realized they were reflections of the crystals themselves, responding to the planetary energy network in unexpected ways. Nira paused at the canyon's edge, her hands touching the air lightly, as if reading the energy before stepping forward. Lyra watched her, impressed by the child's confidence and intuition. Slowly, they stepped into the open desert again, the dunes stretching endlessly in every direction. The crystals scattered across the sand glimmered brightly in the sunlight, casting rainbow reflections across the landscape. "This place is alive," Lyra whispered, more to herself than to Nira. "It's like the planet itself is thinking." Nira hummed softly in agreement, moving forward to lead the way. As they walked, Lyra noticed faint tracks in the sand. They were small, delicate, and unlike any animal prints she had ever seen. Nira bent down, touching the sand with her hands. The energy pulses responded, shifting to highlight a hidden path among the dunes. Lyra followed, realizing that these tracks led to a previously buried section of the facility. The path ended at a partially exposed building, mostly buried under sand. Crystals embedded in the walls glimmered faintly, indicating active energy within. Nira moved forward, placing her hands on the crystals and humming. The energy pulsed and a soft glow illuminated the entrance, showing a clear path inside. Lyra followed, feeling a thrill of anticipation. Whatever lay beyond this threshold was part of the deeper mysteries of the planet, waiting to be discovered. Inside, the chamber was filled with devices Lyra had never seen before. Panels and consoles lined the walls, some projecting faint holographic images of the desert outside. Nira moved gracefully among them, touching surfaces lightly, causing lights to flare and projections to shift. Lyra watched carefully, taking note of every pattern and interaction. The child's ability to navigate and control this alien technology was astonishing. As Lyra explored, she noticed a section of the wall that seemed to contain stored data, holographic records of the planet's past and the species that had once lived here. Nira approached and touched the wall, and the projections shifted to display scenes of life long ago. Lyra saw beings moving across the desert, interacting with the crystals, building structures, and studying the environment. The scenes were peaceful and harmonious, showing a society that respected and understood the delicate balance of the planet. Nira hummed softly, interacting with the projections, guiding Lyra's attention to specific areas. Lyra realized that the child was showing her important patterns, how the species had managed the energy network, maintained balance, and avoided disruption. Lyra felt a surge of excitement. Understanding these systems could help humanity learn new ways to harmonize with other worlds, rather than exploit them. Suddenly, a low vibration ran through the floor. Lyra looked around, concerned. The energy readings fluctuated slightly, though not dangerously. Nira placed her hands on a crystal embedded in the floor, and the pulse stabilized immediately. Lyra realized that the child's presence alone could maintain harmony in the energy network. She marveled at the power of empathy and understanding, the way a small being could influence an entire system through connection rather than force. They spent hours in the chamber, exploring projections, studying energy flows, and following Nira's intuitive guidance. Lyra took careful notes, recording patterns that could help them navigate the rest of the planet safely. She felt a sense of partnership with Nira, a connection built on trust, curiosity, and shared discovery. Humanity had often defined itself by technology and power, but here, she understood that empathy, understanding, and harmony were equally, if not more, important. As the twin suns began to set, Lyra and Nira returned to the desert outside. The crystals glimmered softly, reflecting the fading light, and the dunes stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Nira hummed a gentle melody, walking beside Lyra, and the human felt a deep sense of purpose and wonder. The desert was alive, filled with energy, knowledge, and harmony, and they were only beginning to understand it. That night, they settled near a cluster of glowing crystals, the light casting soft reflections across the sand. Lyra looked at Nira, who curled up beside her, humming softly. She realized that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps more mysteries than she could imagine. But she felt ready. Together, they could explore, learn, and protect the planet's secrets. As the moons rose and bathed the desert in silver light, Lyra felt a profound sense of hope. The journey was far from over, but the trust, empathy, and partnership she shared with Nira had already shown her the best of humanity. Not strength, not conquest, but connection, curiosity, and care could unlock the universe's deepest mysteries. The desert stretched endlessly beneath the twin suns, its dunes glinting gold and crimson, but today the light seemed different. Lyra could feel it in the energy readings from the crystals. They pulsed with unusual intensity, as if the planet itself was calling to them. She adjusted her backpack, checking the instruments, and glanced at Nira, who was already moving ahead, humming softly in her melodic language. The child's silver eyes reflected the sunlight, bright and full of determination, and Lyra felt a surge of excitement. Today, they would reach the heart of the planet's mystery. They followed the faint trails of energy that the crystals emitted, moving carefully across shifting dunes. Each step revealed more of the desert's subtle patterns, and Nira paused often, placing her hands lightly on the sand or on small crystal formations. Each touch caused the glow to pulse and spread, revealing hidden paths and guiding them forward. Lyra marveled at the child's instinctive understanding of the energy. Humanity had always relied on technology to navigate, but here, in harmony with a living world, intuition and care mattered far more. Hours passed as they walked, and the sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the dunes. Lyra noticed subtle changes in the air, a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat, moving beneath the sand. The crystals responded in unison to Neera's presence, glowing brighter and casting shimmering patterns across the landscape. She realized that the planet's energy network was much larger than they had imagined. It was not just a facility or a field of crystals. It was a living system, a web of balance and harmony, and Neera's species had been its caretakers. Finally, they reached a vast formation of crystals rising like towers from the desert. The energy readings surged, and the light from the crystals danced across the sand, creating patterns that seemed almost alive. Neera ran ahead, her small hands tracing shapes in the air, and the crystals responded, shifting and glowing in complex sequences. Lyra followed, awed by the display. It was as if the planet was alive, interacting with Neera in ways Lyra could only observe and admire. At the center of the formation was a raised platform, larger than any they had seen before, surrounded by clusters of pulsing crystals. Neera approached it carefully, her hands hovering over the surface before touching it lightly. The platform responded immediately, and a wave of light spread outward, connecting with all the crystals around them. Lyra stepped closer, sensing the energy radiating from the network. The pulses were gentle yet powerful, carrying a rhythm that resonated deep within her chest. "This is the heart of the planet," she whispered, more to herself than to Neera. The child looked at her, humming softly, and then returned her focus to the crystals. Lyra watched as Neera moved gracefully across the platform, touching each crystal in sequence. The light pulses followed, forming intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story of life, balance, and guardianship. Lyra crouched beside the platform, studying the patterns. She realized that the crystals were not just energy sources. They were memory keepers, recording the planet's history and the actions of its caretakers. Neera's touch unlocked sequences of information, revealing the life of her species, how they had lived in harmony with the energy network, and how the planet thrived under their care. Lyra felt a profound respect for them. Humanity had traveled to countless worlds, but this level of connection and understanding between life and environment was beyond anything she had seen. As Neera continued to interact with the platform, a soft vibration ran through the ground. Lyra noticed faint projections rising from the crystals, forming images of structures and landscapes long buried under sand. She saw beings moving among the crystals, guiding energy flows, teaching younger generations, and tending to the planet's needs. It was peaceful, harmonious, and beautiful. Lyra realized that this was not just a history lesson. It was a living memory, preserved and maintained through energy and care. Neera hummed a series of tones that seemed almost like a song. The projections shifted in response, highlighting areas that required attention. Lyra watched, understanding that the child was showing her how the system worked. Each movement, each note, influenced the energy network, stabilizing it and maintaining balance. Humanity often measured progress through conquest or technology, but here, Lyra saw another kind of achievement: wisdom, empathy, and connection. Suddenly, one section of the projections flickered and dimmed. Lyra frowned. The energy readings indicated instability in a distant part of the network. She looked at Neera, who tilted her head, humming a soft, questioning tone. Lyra realized they had reached the planet's critical point, the area that required careful attention to restore full balance. "Can you guide me?" Lyra asked gently. Neera responded with a melodic tone, taking Lyra's hand and leading her toward the direction indicated by the projections. Together, they moved across the platform, touching crystals and following the patterns that Neera created. The energy flowed, stabilizing in waves, and the light from the crystals spread across the desert, reaching previously dim or inactive formations. As they worked, Lyra marveled at the simplicity and power of Neera's methods. There were no complicated machines or harsh interventions. The child used intuition, care, and gentle guidance to influence the system. Humanity often relied on force and efficiency, but here Lyra saw another path, one that was patient, attentive, and deeply respectful of life. She learned from Neera in real time, copying her gestures, observing the timing of her movements, and beginning to sense the rhythm of the energy network. Hours passed, though Lyra lost track of time. The sun began its descent, and the twin moons cast long shadows across the dunes. The energy network stabilized fully under Nira's guidance, glowing in synchronized patterns across the desert. Lyra stepped back, awe in her eyes, and watched as the planet's heart pulsed steadily, calm and balanced. The child's small hands had unlocked and harmonized a system that had been dormant for centuries. Nira turned to Lyra, her eyes shining with joy. She hummed a melody of triumph, and Lyra responded with a soft whistle, sharing the child's happiness. Together they stood on the platform, overlooking the glowing crystals, feeling the gentle hum of the planet beneath them. It was a moment of accomplishment, wonder, and deep connection, one that neither of them would forget. "You did it," Lyra whispered, her voice full of admiration. Nira tilted her head and hummed, as if saying, "We did it together." Lyra realized then that their journey had been more than exploration. It had been a partnership, a bridge between species, and a demonstration of humanity's best qualities: curiosity, empathy, patience, and the courage to reach out and connect with life beyond themselves. As night fell completely, the twin moons rose high, casting silver light across the desert. The crystals pulsed softly, reflecting the moon's glow in delicate patterns. Nira settled near Lyra, humming a gentle melody that seemed to blend with the planet's energy. Lyra sat beside her, watching the patterns dance across the sand, feeling a profound sense of peace. The world was alive, harmonious, and full of mysteries, but she knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The experience changed Lyra in ways she could not have predicted. She had always believed in humanity's ability to explore, to solve problems, and to discover new worlds. But here, in the heart of a living desert, she realized that discovery was not just about knowledge. It was about connection, empathy, and respect. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology alone, but the capacity to care, to understand, and to harmonize with life in all its forms. The next morning, Lyra and Nira explored the platform one last time before preparing to return to the facility. The energy readings were stable, the crystals pulsing in steady patterns, and the desert stretched endlessly, peaceful and alive. Nira led Lyra to the edge of the formation, where they could see the facility in the distance, partially buried under sand. The child hummed softly, and Lyra could see the gratitude and joy reflected in her expression. "This world is incredible," Lyra said aloud, feeling the truth of her words deeply. Nira responded with a series of melodic tones echoing Lyra's sentiment. Together they walked back across the dunes, the glowing crystals lighting their path. Each step was deliberate, respectful, and filled with a sense of purpose. When they reached the facility, Lyra paused to look back at the desert. The crystals glimmered in soft light, the dunes stretching endlessly, and she felt a deep connection to the planet. Humanity had traveled far across the stars, but this world had taught her that exploration was not just about reaching new places. It was about understanding, connecting, and protecting. Nira had guided her to a new understanding of life, energy, and harmony. That night, Lyra and Nira rested in the facility, the soft hum of the crystals surrounding them like a lullaby. The child curled up beside her, humming gently, and Lyra felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey had begun with a single cry, a small signal of distress, and had grown into a deep connection between two beings from different worlds. Together they had restored balance, uncovered history, and discovered the true heart of the planet. As Lyra drifted to sleep, she knew that the adventure was far from over. The desert held more secrets, the crystals more knowledge, and the partnership between human and alien more possibilities than she could imagine. But for now, there was peace, wonder, and the quiet triumph of connection. Humanity had shown its best qualities: curiosity, empathy, and the courage to reach out to life beyond its own. And in the trust and intelligence of Nira, she saw the reflection of what humanity could be at its finest. The desert whispered under the moon's silver glow, the crystals pulsing gently like a heartbeat. And in the quiet, Lyra and Nira rested, knowing that together they had unlocked something greater than themselves. A living harmony, a bridge between worlds, and a reminder that the heart of humanity could reach across the stars.